Manchester derby came and went this weekend with a fairly predictable result, although there was a few surprises during the game. But we're left with an all too familiar feeling that we have been left with after a Manchester derby for the last few years, which is Manchester City are miles ahead of Manchester United, challenging for yet another Premier League title, and Manchester United are left wondering where they go from here. And it's kind of been how it has gone the last several years. And I did do some score predictions before the weekend, and the only one I got right was 3-1 Manchester City. I wish I had gotten it wrong. But I watched the game, and of course, easy to get a little bit too encouraged by, after the first 10 minutes, even after the first half, when Manchester United had a 1-0 lead. It was, I was really just curious how the rest of the game was going to go, although I think I had a pretty good idea. When we look at the game, I want to break down some of the things that we saw in this game, a little bit of the tactics, and then just some of the game planning. But, Manchester United set up very defensively. And they were missing some players, of course, but I'm not sure what they would have done differently had they had a few of these players back in the squad. Manchester City kind of been going with their 4-3-3 where they have a center back. They had John Stones step into the midfield. So it looks more like a 3-2-2-3. And it just gives them that extra man in the midfield. It allows them to, kind of put more pressure on the opposing team by kind of having that player step up into the midfield. And then Manchester United went with, I'm going to just call it like a 4-4-2-ish, okay? Because if you saw what they were, you could see what they were trying to do. And it was, they had their back four, then they had Mainu and Casemiro as the two pivot central midfielders. Then they had Bruno and McTominay as kind of false nines, both of them playing kind of a false nine, each of them. And then they had the wingers, Garnacho and Rashford. And they wanted to have the two false nines, Bruno and McTominay, be able to kind of step up and pressure, or both of them pressure, and have the center mids, Mainu and Casemiro, kind of holding it down. And it definitely worked at times, but I saw that Casemiro was getting stretched in different directions. He was playing as a center back sometimes. He was pulled all over. Mainu was then, they just didn't have very good discipline. And that's what you're going to have. If you're going to play a defensive style, which they set up very defensively, then you have to have discipline. And Manchester United just don't have discipline. And they set up very defensively for this game. And I'm not opposed to parking the bus. And that's essentially what they ended up doing. I'm not opposed to that. I mean, you can look at some famous wins in the history where, you think of Inter Milan versus Barcelona, which was Jose Mourinho versus Pep, where he parked the bus with Inter and they counterattacked and scored and won the tie. That was a famous win. And I give credit because you have to focus for 90 plus minutes and play lights out defensively. And you're working so hard throughout the game. So I don't have a problem with it. And I think it then challenges the other team to break you down. And I like that dynamic in a football match. I want to see if one team, oftentimes it's a better team, can they overcome that challenge? So Manchester United set up in that way. And it worked in some ways in the first half. The problem was they were kind of all over the place. They were stretched. Manchester City still had tons of opportunities, but United was trying to engage City a little bit higher up the pitch, closer to midfield. So they weren't just letting City have, 3/4 of the field and then engaging them. They were engaging them and then dropping back if City were able to break the lines. They had a lot of shots. They had a lot of goals. I mean, you can look at the statistics. It was all City. I loved the goal. Look, I loved the goal because I thought it exposed a little bit of what you need to try to expose when you're playing City. And that is a potential long ball over the top into the, a little bit towards the corners. This was more down the middle though. Bruno did a great job of staying onside, brought the ball down, held it. Rashford supported him. He laid it off, and Rashford with an incredible finish. I mean, that was an exciting goal. And that is something that City are not great at, is balls over the top, a little bit into the corners. They do tend to get players a little higher these days, and so those balls are on. And Onana played a great game, played a great ball, and played a great game. I mean, Onana kept Manchester United in it. I thought that was actually one of his best performances. Some of the goals that he got scored against, not much he could do about it. I mean, maybe the second one, I thought maybe he could have done a little bit more with that. Otherwise, he made some great saves. He was catching the ball, holding on to it. His distribution was really good. I mean, you got to feel for the guy because he played a great game and still lost 3-1. But it was really came down to the team. And at halftime, United gave up some chances. Erling Haaland missed a sitter. And I don't care if it was a little bit high. That's a goal that you should score and expect to score. I would say he's missed more chances than we would expect him to miss this season. He just gets an overwhelming number of chances that he still is a high goal scorer. And yes, he puts a lot of them away. Don't get me wrong. But he could have way more goals this season. I'll just put it that way. But now that Kevin De Bruyne is back, he probably will. So they go into halftime, 1-0. Manchester United, decent defensive display. I would say it was more down to City not executing and not being their usual clinical selves than Manchester United playing a great strategy. And I think that was a false sense of confidence for United because they just came out the second half playing very similar. But what happened was they got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And Robbie Mustoe on the broadcast said, if they're going to keep playing this way, we all expect City to score. And we kind of did, right? So I think if you're going to do that, you got to throw something at City that they don't expect, right? Because otherwise they're going to be the big bad wolf and they're going to keep huffing and keep puffing. And eventually they're going to blow it down, right? And what happened was Manchester United just kind of dropped back and dropped back and dropped back and dropped back until they were parking the bus significantly. And when you get to that point, you're going to make it really hard on yourselves. You're going to have to absorb a tremendous amount of pressure, and they weren't able to do it. And so it was fairly predictable that City were going to score. And I think they just pushed United back more and more as the game went on. Whereas I think you got to be creative. You got to throw something at City. Like, okay, maybe you come out in the first 10, 15 minutes and high press, high intensity, right? You got your rest at halftime. You come out pressing high up the pitch, try to disrupt City, throw something at them they're not expecting, get to the 60th minute, and then make some substitutions that they're going to come in with a strong work rate. And you're not going to cede too much ground to City. You know, it was very predictable. Man U came out, City knew what they were going to do. They were defending. It was not as organized. It was not as intense. And City were able to wear that down. But man, if you came out high pressure, high intensity, maybe nick another goal, who knows? But get to the 60th minute mark, make a few subs, fresh legs, and keep a strong intensity. You don't have to go, full court press. But then you kind of settle back to maybe the midfield line like they did in the first half and just throw something at them they're not ready for. Everybody knew exactly how the second half was going to go. I mean, it was kind of obvious. And of course, Phil Foden, great game. I thought he is putting on a sensational season. I think if you're the England boss and you're choosing between Rashford and Foden after this game, you got to go Phil Foden. I think Rashford made a huge mistake that led to Manchester City's first goal. They had a break where he was running against Kyle Walker, and Kyle Walker, that guy is getting older, but he is still super fast. And he caught Rashford and just gave him a little nudge, and Rashford goes down. And you got to fight for that ball. You got to know that this is a chance for you to get the ball up the pitch, relieve some pressure, hold on to it if you don't get an opportunity, and try to kind of and then create an opportunity, or at least go for the ball and try to get a shot on goal. But he just goes down so easily. That was not a foul. And they turn around and City go and score a minute later. I mean, that was a big mistake on Rashford's part. I'm not going to let him off the hook and say that was a foul and it should have been called. I don't think it was a foul. So I just thought there was just some things that Manchester United, again, the gap between them and City, it's the same story every year. they have not closed the gap. And I think the patience is wearing thin for me a little bit on Eric Ten Hag. I can't imagine why he would say they played a great game. He was proud of their performance. I thought it was a pretty weak performance. The first 10 minutes were great. And then after that, nothing. And so I just thought, man, could they have gotten a little bit more unpredictable and throw something at City you don't know? But here we are, 3-1 Manchester derby. Manchester City here, Manchester United here, miles away. City challenging for the title. Although I am excited because Liverpool and Arsenal look up for the task this year. And so City are not going to run away with anything. They're going to have a tough road ahead of them. But I do think there's a blueprint to beat them. Manchester United just didn't follow it. I don't think they have the players to follow it. I think we say this all the time, but it's true. I think they need an overhaul. And we'll see if that can happen or not. But as a Manchester United fan, a little bit frustrating. You get a little bit excited and you think, oh, maybe we can nick one here. And then, of course, get overrun. I mean, possession was 70, 75, I think, 25. Shots, XG was over 3 for City and 0.26 for Manchester United. You can't win a game when you do that. So I think they got to look inside themselves, got to find a way to finish the year strong. They have a relatively lighter schedule, but they gotta compete. They're not going to just ride the wave until and get back into Champions League. I think they really need to make some improvements, Manchester United, if they're going to challenge for the Champions League. There was a time where they were getting back in it, and now they're 6 points off of fourth, so they got some work to do. Tottenham have a game in hand ahead of them, so if you're a United fan like me, it's another long season ahead to finish this thing out. And then we'll get overexcited about it in the summer and then get brought back down again, unless we make some big changes. Overall, guys, let me know what you thought about the game in the comments. If you agree with my analysis, I thought United just were pulled a little bit too all over the place in the first half. And then they went back into a shell in the second half, but they weren't able to compensate with what City brought to them. And a disappointing result for sure. But it definitely proves that Manchester City are at a different level than Manchester United right now. So stay tuned. Hey, if you guys like the discourse, we want to add more. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and remember, know thy soccer. See you next time.